Well, welcome to our program. Today we're going to be talking about a genealogy trip with a twist. How to add a coming to the table experience to your adventure. My name is Kathy Lynn Marshall, and I was a researcher, analyst, and technical writer for the California Highway Patrol for 36 years. Sadly, though, I failed for 40 years to write my family history. But I finally developed a quick start process to help me meet my mandate, which is to self-publish one book per year. And I've been doing it since 2016. My stories are told from the point of view of my relatives. Oh, so you're a family historian too? Well, welcome to the crowd. No doubt you've been gathering vital records and probate documents, and you've interviewed your relatives to learn about their stories. And of course, I know you got yourself a DNA test, right? And you tested your family. You use Google to find information online, and then you also check out the social media sites that have genealogy information. And of course, you've documented your findings so that you can leave a written legacy, right? You also follow the genealogical proof standard like I do, right? Where, number one, you make a reasonably exhaustive search for records, not just online from your home computer. You've completed accurate source citations for each fact that you use, right? You ensure your evidence is reliable and has been skillfully correlated and interpreted. And you resolve any contradictory evidence. Last, you write soundly reasoned, coherent conclusions. Yep, that's how you roll, right? Just like me. What are you going to do with all the information you've collected? Are you going to leave it as a jumbled mess in boxes and binders, on Post-it notes and in your computer? Or will you organize it and make a timeline so you can develop and prove theories about your family history? Will you do all your research from home, your nice comfy computer, or will you also visit the land of your ancestors for experiences that aren't digitally available? Well, that's what we're going to talk about. Let's discuss how to organize a genealogy trip with a coming to the table twist, with maybe some suggestions thrown in for how to leave a written legacy of history to your family. I'm excited, aren't you? Let's get moving. Okay, well, what does coming to the table mean anyway? I'm going to give a simple explanation. Basically, for this presentation, it means sharing a meal with the sons and daughters of enslavers and their enslaved, talking about taboo and sensitive topics, listening to one another's viewpoints, and forging common ground. Okay, if you want more information, see the comingtothetable.org website. They have the real official stuff. All right, well, what's wrong with doing all your research from the comfort of your home computer? What's wrong with that? Well, many of you know that the Latter-day Saints and others have gone to nearly every courthouse in America, and they've digitized most of their historical records. Not all, but most. Many documents like census, birth, marriage records, probate and land records are now available online, and many of them are free to the public if you use FamilySearch.org. Now, if you're going to use Ancestry and MyHeritage, they're going to charge you to access that information. So some of these sources are fee-based. But looking at a map is not like being there. Smelling the place, seeing the community, and feeling the essence of your ancestors all around you can only be accomplished if you go to the place, if you make a pilgrimage to the land of your home, your ancestors. Yes, the genealogy trips can be expensive if you don't have family that's still living there who will put you up in their room for a night or 2 or 7. But the experience is priceless. I'm telling you, it's really priceless. And that's what I'm hoping to share with you in this presentation to make you excited about going to the place. All right. So after becoming vaccinated against the COVID virus during 2020 and 2021 pandemic, I wasn't eligible to get my vaccine until April 1st, 2021. But once I got vaccinated, I thought, I might just have time before I get my current manuscript to the editor on July 1st. I might have time in May to take a genealogy trip. And so I drafted a quick itinerary of the places I wanted to visit in Gwinnett, Putnam, Talbot, and Muskogee counties in Georgia. Like I wanted to go to the courthouses and the cemeteries and churches, places like that. So I contacted all of those places in advance to determine the days and hours of operation, whether they had tours or maybe they had some experts that could help me out. And then I developed a spreadsheet. And on that spreadsheet, I included the places, the people, the events for each day. And I tried to arrange several meals that maybe local cousins might be able to come and participate with me. That's what the coming to a table. It's breaking bread with your relatives. And so that's what I wanted to do. I put together a spreadsheet. I emailed my itinerary to old and new cousins that I had met, founding, with DNA. I'm sorry, but that's the key for a lot of African Americans to make a success, is to get DNA tested and find other relatives who are in your family line. And so I sent the itinerary to all these folks, 20 people. And I asked for their feedback. Do you have any other places, any other suggestions for what I might visit? And guess what? Some cousins wanted to join me on that trip, including a DNA cousin, Amy, with whom I had been talking for about a year, but I'd never met her. And she wanted to come from Utah. Yay! More cousins expressed interest too, cousins who were living in Georgia especially. This was really going to happen. So try to entice your relatives to come with you on the genealogy trip. Make it a party. All right, so here's a partial itinerary that I emailed to folks. I include the date, the day of the week, where the activity will take place, what the hours are, the address and phone number, and I also have a column for miscellaneous comments. This is just a sample of how you can do it. A picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So what I'd like to do is take you along on my trip and show you some of the highlights, the things that I could not find, see, experience from my home computer. Alrighty? So this is a brief look. This is a May 2021 trip to Georgia and to Tuskegee, Alabama. Both places helped me publish The Marshall Legacy in Black and White, which is the book that I'm showing right up there. I was able to publish that in August because of the genealogy trip. I could put all of my puzzle pieces together. So now I'd like you to imagine yourself going on this trip with me. And the next several slides, just think about whether this information would help you, would benefit you in your family research. And what I'm hoping to do is encourage you to make that genealogy trip yourself, okay? So May 23rd was the first day of the trip, and I flew out from Sacramento. My cousin Amy flew out from Provo, Utah, and we flew into Atlanta, Georgia. Okay, so it was kind of starting okay, except that Amy had a 2-hour flight delay. Ooh, that could put a crimp in our plans. My flight was perfect, and it arrived at 3 p.m. And guess what? Her plane arrived on time. Somehow, I don't know how, it did. It arrived on time. Everything was going real good, except we had a disaster when it came to the car rental place. And so I wrote about that in this book, Finding Marshals Coming to the Deep South. Coming to the Table in the Deep South. It was crazy, but everything kind of worked out. From that disaster, I started writing a lessons learned. So all the lessons I learned on this trip, I've included in that book, the Finding Marshals book. A lot of examples, a lot of cautionary tales, and a lot of great stuff. All right. I talk about writing books a lot. It's not just a shameless self-promoting of my books. I want to encourage you, and especially African Americans, to leave a written legacy of family history. We have got to change the narrative in this country to represent our part in this country. We too are an important part of America. We built America. Black lives matter too. But nobody's going to know that if we don't write our stories. So please, whenever I talk about my books, Just understand, I want to encourage you to do the same so that you can say the same thing and you can get your history and your stories out there. It's really, really important. All right. The first benefit, we meet new cousins. We meet new relatives. Some of them may have more information about the family than we do, and they'll share with us and we'll share with them. It's kumbaya. It's fabulous, okay? Oh, and it's really nice and fun when you have someone to explore the sites together. And even if you're black and white going together and there are different sides of the same coin, and there can be very uncomfortable parts of our shared history, right? Slavery. But it can be really beneficial. All right, so here we go. I go to these plantations where my family used to be enslaved, and I go to and I visit other plantations to find out. And when I go, I often hear voices, or I hear the whispers of the essence of the slaves who worked there. And I imagine the house slaves walking like invisible folks as they do their daily chores. And I feel their pain and their fear. And I write about that in a daily journal, okay? I take videos, I take photos, I write the thoughts and feelings every day so that when I get back home, I'll really remember the full import of that trip. And I can share it with my relatives and show them what it was like, okay? Believe me, being there is different than looking at a picture on a computer. It really is. So take those pictures, take those videos, write the journal. It'll really help you later. Ooh, slaves were buried in a snake-infested bamboo forest. Wow, this is probably not uncommon. I was mad, sad, and feeling bad. Teary, weary, my eyes were bleary. My cousin Amy videotaped me at the edge of that forest. I gave a really heartfelt soliloquy to those poor souls who were perhaps my ancestors buried right there. It really gets you in the heart and the soul when you realize some of your ancestors could be buried back there. This was the first coming to the table lunch. It was at the Georgia Butts Barbecue, and it was near slaveholder Stephen B. Marshall's property in Putnam, Georgia. And these are some of the cousins that I met there. Fabulous. We're breaking bread. We're talking about these things. All right. So even though a lot of records have been digitized and are available on your home computer, free if you use FamilySearch.org, there's nothing like touching the original primary documents. And it's easier to read them. Look how big they are. Look at that picture. They're really big and they're heavy. You got to move those books. But there's nothing like it. Nothing like it. And so anyway, I was looking for my family's slave names in Stephen B. Marshall's probate records from 1864. Wow. I took a couple of other visits to other courthouses. The one on the left is from Talbot County. And of course, they had their Confederate soldier out front, and I refused to take a picture of that person. And the ladies in the center there are the ones, the deputy clerks that helped Amy and me try to find more information about our ancestors. The picture on the right is from Tuskegee in Alabama, Macon County, Alabama, and some incredible stories happened there. I'm telling you. That's why you must know the hours of operation before you set up your itinerary and flight plans. Okay, I didn't have a lot of time, and it was going to be Saturday that I had time to go to Tuskegee. They're not open on Saturday. So you really need to make sure that you understand the time and the place and get contact information, because courthouses aren't usually open on weekends. Ooh, this is interesting. This is very interesting. I'm going to see if I can play this. Let's see if this is going to work. This is in Talbot. Amy and I spent an exciting adventure Wednesday afternoon with expert historian Michael Buckner and his wife Deborah. He was on a mission to show us girls as many places as possible in the 5 hours we had together. And the man delivered. He really delivered. That was my favorite day of the whole trip. This video shows him trying to find the exact location of William Blount Marshall's plantation. He was our slave owner, and we are genetically related to that Marshall lineage. I wrote lots of detail about this thrilling tale in the Finding Our Marshalls book. This is just a part of it. And okay, here we go. A few seconds.
Looking for William Marshall's home. We're on Sarah Marshall Road right now.
Wow. The places he took us, the things we did to try to find this plantation. And he also took us in trying to find the Marshall plantation. He took us and we did, well, see that first word up there? Don't tell anyone. I'm not saying it out loud. Oh, no, we didn't. Trespassing? Yep, my partner in crime, Michael, took us many places to find the elusive slave owner's plantation. And this turned out to be the Bunkley house, not the Marshall house. Well, that's not so bad. My great-great-grandfather, Samuel Marshall, who was enslaved, married a woman, his second wife, named Emmeline Bunkley. So perhaps my relative, my ancestor, stood exactly where I was standing, right there in that picture, at some point in his life. And I'm telling you, that sends real thrills and chills through your body when you realize you could be really in the land of your ancestors. That's what it's all about, folks. Take a genealogy trip and get those feelings. Pretty amazing. Now, on his property, he lives right here. This is his family's plantation. And it's from 1830. And there are lots of former slave cabins there. There's a cotton field on the right. He didn't plant it this year because they're suffering a drought, evidently, in Georgia. But normally it's planted in cotton. He has people come over once a year. It's a harvest festival, so to speak, to see his place. It's phenomenal. Phenomenal. It's spooky. It's not spooky, scary, creepy. It's phenomenal. Now, 150 years later, or 200 years later. But anyway, so he has a pottery, he has a grist mill, and he showed us all of that while we were there. It was just great. Yourself. So here's Michael Buckner's pottery and grist mill. He actually built, a pottery is a kiln. So the plates and cups that you eat on normally, it's made out of clay, is fired in a kiln to over 2,000 degrees to make it hard as stone, right? That's what the pottery is. So he built this big brick structure that you see. It's about 15 feet long and 6 or 7 feet tall. It's amazing. And see where that little hole is in there? That's where the pottery, the clay, the plates and the cups and the bowls that a potter would make, it goes inside that hole. And then he uses wood from his property and fires it up for I don't know how many days to reach over 2,000 degrees to make these pots, like his wife Debbie is holding this big pot in her hand. Fascinating. I'm a potter myself, so I really love this. The grist mill is on the right. A grist mill is where you take water power and you power mechanical devices. Okay, so, woo, it was amazing. I've read about it, but I could never really understand how the process worked. So the process of letting water in from the lake, so he's got a lake right at the base of his front yard, his big old lake at the edge of his property. And so he lets the water in, and it comes into that building, the bottom of that building, and it starts to power or turn power these turbines, which turn these big leather straps. And these straps are attached to, like he has a corn grinder. It grinds dried corn into grits, and he sells his own grits in the pots that he makes in his own pottery. It's just awesome. And anyway, they have a water wheel on the back side of that building on the right, and we got to see the water wheel turn, and he's got, cotton gin inside. It's incredible. You cannot fully understand this process by reading a book from home. He had this 500-pound bale of cotton in that building that we just saw. I wasn't real happy, but I had to get a picture with it, didn't I? Oh my gosh. Do you know that bale of cotton was calling to me? Just touch me, just stroke me. See how soft I am. How can something so soft be so bad? And then I thought about the burrs, the thorns that sliced the skin of my enslaved ancestors who had to pick that innocent cotton in the hot sun. Yes, I wrote those mixed feelings in my daily journal. I handled a post-slavery work contract. Y'all have heard of the Freedmen's Bureau, right? And after slavery, folks who had been enslaved all their lives didn't know what to do, where to go. Some of them did, and they hightailed it to the north. But some of them had big families, and they couldn't do that. They didn't know what to do, so they were invited to stay on with their former owner. And so they had to fill out a contract, a work contract. And this was a work contract from his family, Michael Buckner's family. And he showed it to me, and it was fascinating. It was awful, but it was fascinating to read that basically these freed people were still doing the same thing they did as slaves, working 6 days a week. And guess what? But they got paid this time, $25 whole after working 6 months, 6 days a week. It was sickening. But it was great to be able to see that work ledger, a real work ledger. Okay, then we went to Columbus, Georgia. Amy and I had a crazy adventure trying to figure out how to get into the massive St. James African Methodist Episcopal Church. Once we finally found the research library, Amy found it, thank God, it was next door. I looked through church ledgers from 1900 to try to find my great-great-grandfather Reverend Israel Smith's name or any of my marshals in their list of parishioners. Real church records, I've heard about them. People say they're great. It's the first time I actually touched church records. And then we went to look for Grandpa Austin's house. He lived at 1710 5th Street in Columbus, Georgia, according to some census records. I wanted to see the house, right? I had tried to find it online with a Google search, and I couldn't find a house there. What's going on? Because there was no house there. The neighborhood had been demolished, or at least where my grandpa lived, had been demolished for a shopping center and a parking lot, and there was a cancer center. Cousin Jennifer Owens, with whom we would meet the following day for that coming to the table meal, lived just a couple of blocks away from here. Here's another trip. Okay, I got chills in Cotton Valley on State Route 29. So another DNA cousin who may be related to my Liggins or my Smiths from Tuskegee, Alabama, told me to travel through Cotton Valley. Okay, it's just a few miles south of Tuskegee on State Route 29. And let me tell you, I got the chills going through that whole place. I want you to look at that picture on the top. Look at those trees. Now, these should have leaves on them, and they look dead. They're sharp. The edges looked sharp, and they reminded me of like they were maybe the arms of slaves coming up from the ground. You know, it was so horrifying. It was really scary. It was crazy scary. It was weird. I was by myself traveling on this one lane each way road, State Route 29. And this is where it's called Cotton Valley, y'all. You know why? Because all these fields that are now forests that you see there in that bottom picture, all those fields used to be cotton plantations. And I'm pretty sure that's where my Liggins and my Smiths were enslaved and working hard. Maybe they worked in the house, but I don't know. They might have been in them fields. Miles and miles of cotton fields, now planted with pine forests for paper products. But the history lives on. The history lives on. And so when I'm thinking these slaves are reaching up, praying to their God to please relieve the pain, relieve the indignities, free us, free our enslaved station. It was really powerful. You can't get that from a picture on a computer, folks. And then you will not believe I found a congressional record. Who finds a congressional record with my great-great-grandfather, Reverend Israel Smith, his testimony in there from this place, that church right there, or probably this may be a rebuilt of the building that was there in the past, but there's a nice plaque and it tells the whole story. This is my real history, and I'm right there, standing right there where my ancestors lived. My great-great-grandfather's words, his testimony, helped to force a voter recount of the 1870 presidential election in Georgia, at least in Alabama. Why did it happen? Well, you won't believe this. Well, maybe you will. The KKK and Southern Democrats had tinkered with the black vote. This was the first time black folks were able to vote. This is right after slavery. Okay, they had been able to now register to vote, and they wanted to vote. But KKK intimidating, and they were messing with the actual votes. And so a recount was demanded based on partly my ancestors' testimony. And the outcome changed to the liberal, at the time, back then, Republicans were the liberal folks. I had to see that church mentioned in the congressional record where all the ruckus happens. All right. Now, this is why I'm doing a book instead of my normal 20-page photo book. It's because when Amy and I were driving in the car, we didn't just drive silently. We were talking the whole time. We were talking about taboo subjects, sensitive things, black and white issues, like her remorse at having found that she had enslavers in her ancestry. She hated that. She is a Latter-day Saint, and she was hating that. And I learned the difference between what a Mormon is and an LDS. What is all that about? We talked about how white planters grew their human crop. You know what I mean, right? They take their female slaves and they make babies, mulatto babies that look like this, to grow their crop for free. We talked about white baby black breast. If you think we're so subhuman, why would you put your white babies at the black mammy's breast? That don't make no sense. And then I had so many instances of the angry black woman, but I had to be cool because I'm the only black person that I saw in a lot of places. And I had to be cool, but I wanted to write about it, and I didn't want to be cool. And I'm writing about all this in this chapter called Car Talk in this Finding Our Marshals book that I had to write. We talked about the pride we have in our families, and we did talk a little bit about politics. It was helpful that we were pretty much along the same vein. It would have been hard if we weren't. But that's what this coming to the table stuff is all about, is having black and white, or whatever, racial. It could be Jewish, it could be Christian, it could be any of these groups that are infighting. And it's an opportunity to talk and to share how you feel about things. And hopefully there's some common ground, or at least an understanding of how the other half feels. All right. Keep a daily journal. Before bed, I write about what happened that day. My thoughts, my feelings. I tie together photos. I write about the where, the what, the who, so that when I get home, I'll be able to remember all of this juicy stuff that I learned. All right. Now, let's get into how do you plan for this coming to the table event. You have been inspired by these pictures I've been showing you, right? Yay! You want to do it too. You can do it too. You can do it too. And here are some ideas. It's not the end all. But first of all, you need to find out, well, how big is this thing going to be, right? So the next few slides, we're going to talk about the planning of it. Once you start sharing that you want to go on a genealogy trip, and this is kind of what you want to do, put together that spreadsheet, that itinerary, and send it out to all of your relatives who you might, not even the ones that you think might be interested, all of your relatives that are on those family lines that you're researching. Send this to all of them. All of them. And figure out how many might want to come. Maybe they'll want to come to a meal. Maybe you want to make it like a full-fledged reunion type thing where you're going to have overnighters and you're going to rent a place for 3 days and 3 nights and all that stuff. How big is this thing going to be? What town do you want to have it in? When will it be held? And when you start sending out your itinerary and getting ideas from other folks, you can start asking, well, when would you be available to meet with us? So you're going to decide on the scope of the event, okay? Are you going to need hotel rooms? You're going to need to rent a block of hotel rooms. If so, do you need RSVPs? Do you need them to make a down payment? Yes. If you're going to be reserving rooms and reserving even a restaurant and saying, yeah, we're going to have 30 meals or whatever, you probably need to get money up front just to be sure that it all happens. Otherwise, you're going to be left with that bag. Discuss what kind of topics you want to talk about. The ground rules, okay? Because people can start, you don't want people to be fighting and cursing at each other. But it's hard. These are enslaver and enslaved race issues. It is hard stuff. Both sides of the same coin, right? But you need to do all of this in advance. This is pre-planning, okay? So you might want to solicit volunteers for various tasks. Like if it's going to be anything, like more than 3 people, you might want to have a master of ceremonies. You might have a facilitator. I served as a facilitator for the California Highway Patrol for many years, facilitating groups of folks who needed to come to some common ground. So what you would have to really determine is what are the rules going to be when things start to get hot. Are you going to say, well, hey, you get 5 minutes, you're going to have the speaker stick for 5 minutes, and nobody is going to question them or frown or anything. You're going to listen for 5 minutes. And then, so whatever rules you want to come up with, you might want to have a facilitator that's going to help some of those discussions, those sensitive discussions. You might want to have someone that puts together the agenda, the program, right? And prints it out, makes it look nice, sends it to everyone in advance so they know what to expect. You might want to hire or ask for someone to serve as a photographer and take videos of the event. You might want to ask people to get out their smartphones and take a bunch of pictures and send you, the coordinator, all of those pictures and videos at some point. So you can maybe put together a big video, put them on YouTube so everyone can see what transpired. People who couldn't come, let them know what transpired. You might want to have people who do the genealogy piece, right? Put together some family relationship charts. I did that for our folks, put together a chart that showed all of us on the bottom and our family lineages, okay? Who's our parents, our grandparents, and as we get to that common ancestor, so everybody could see how we're interrelated. You might have someone do that, volunteer to do that work. You might have someone put together a binder, or like a spiral bound is really nice, but some kind of binder of information, family information. You could collect contacts, people's contacts, their names, their addresses, their email addresses, stuff like that. Here's what our family historian, Myrtle Levada Williams, prepared for our 1983 and 2003 family reunions. It's kind of like that. You can have what I call the Genesis version of genealogy, right here, where it has, here's the 7th generation and who married who and when and how many children did they have and all that. There is a place for that. You can have your charts, you can have your DNA stuff in there. Again, contact information is really good. How do you get in touch with these people later? All kinds of things you could put in there and print out in advance. Levada, she made 1 book per family unit. So not for every child and all that, but just for each family unit. It was really helpful. All right. And then I harp. I do many presentations on trying to encourage people to leave a written family legacy. Leave a written legacy to your family. It's my rally cry. We are not represented. African American history is not represented in the history books that our children and all children learn about in school. It's a crime. It literally is a crime. And it's up to us to change that, to write our own narratives, to be at those, parent-teacher conference meetings, to go to the school board sessions and demand that our history be told. And this whole thing about critical race theory, let's tell the truth. We did have a place in America. There's nothing wrong with that. Our children need to feel proud of that. Too, T-O-O. Black Lives Matter Two, TOO. I'm getting hot and bothered about this. Okay, if you need any help, if I can help you in writing your book, please use me as a resource. Each of my books here that are available online have a chapter in them called Solving Your Mystery. It's all the steps that I personally take. A lot of sources to research, links where you just click on it and it'll take you right to it. There's a focus exercise to help you determine which book to write. You can't write a book about all your family lines. You just can't. It's not going to work. But you can write a focused book that talks about your ancestors and your descendants to the present time. That's going to help your DNA testing to work really well for you. If I can help you in any way, please, any of these books, and on the back, if you look on Amazon, it'll tell you what the book is about and all this. They're from different parts of the United States. Maryland, the Deep South, West Virginia. If you got family there, I do a lot of history. It's not just about my family. It's about the history of the whole community. So please feel free, contact through those books. They may help you. An alternative is to do a photo book, a 20-page photo book. That's what I usually use. And I use Walgreens because you make the book on your home computer, you upload it to the Walgreens cloud, and then you press print, and in 3 hours you just drive into the store and pick it up. It's done. There's no shipping. It's great. If you get on their mailing list, they often have 50% off, 60% off. Why not? It's a good alternative. Other alternatives, if you really can't do it because it is expensive to go on a genealogy trip, is have a Zoom session, a Zoom chat session. It's where you can see each other on your computer. All of your family members call in at the same time and you can see each other and chat. It's great. A lot of people know how to do that now because of COVID. Create a private Facebook page for family members only, or create a family blog or a newsletter. And of course, use your Google tools, Google Maps, Google Search, to find all sorts of documents and information about your family. You can do it at home. You can. It's just not as good as making a pilgrimage. All right. So summary of this presentation. Traveling to one's homeland for a genealogy trip is priceless. Convening a coming to the table event and communing with multi-race family members can be healing. DNA testing is desirable to find more relatives, and leaving a written legacy of family history is invaluable. My books can help you write your own stories. Thanks for coming. Good luck.